Yeah, hi, my name's Sebastian. I'll be talking a little bit about sort of my career progression, or sort of how I got to where I am now, and then I'll jump into Unleash because I think it's super cool, and I'll talk a little bit about sort of the open source part of it, and also about feature toggles in general, because I think they're sort of up and coming and will be or are already being used sort of all over the place. So let's get into it. Yeah, so hi, Sebastian, implementation architect at Unleash. I was born in Germany, but grew up in the United States. Went to Bentley between 2012 and 2017. Yeah, so at my Bentley time, I was an economics and finance major with a CIS minor. Liked it so much that I stuck around for another year and got my MSIT in 2017. I was part of the swim team, part of ISA, and did several different internships during my time there at Bentley as well. So sort of all over the place, quite busy. Liked being in the tutoring center later in the evening. So I was definitely, I don't know, Mark, how late you keep it open anymore, but I remember there was some 11 p.m. midnight closing times before, which was always fun.
Now we're online at night.
Ah, nice.
The world has changed.
I remember we trialed that and it didn't get much response then, but maybe the
It
pandemic.
wasn't the thing that we were ahead of our time.
Yeah. After I graduated with MSIT, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was kind of open for anything sort of tech related still. In my internships, I'd done stuff in finance and had gone also as a sort of software engineer developer kind of position, and knew that both of those weren't really for me and wanted something that was kind of a mix of both worlds. And so I ended up joining Kitewheel. I just found it on the career website, applied to it, and got a position there. And there was a startup. It was about 20 people when I joined. They grew to about 35 by the time I left. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was a technical consultant. It was marketing automation and sort of customer journey management. So automating the flows and touch points that companies have with their clients. So it was mainly software that companies use to interact with their customers in some way, whether that was onboarding new customers, continuing education, trying to promote new features or things that they were doing, all kinds of things. And so it was a lot of fun. I loved the work, but marketing automation wasn't really my thing either. But the people were great. I loved the small company, had a lot of fun there. Casey, I'm not sure if you know Farid Hanania, but he was at Protivity and I stole him over to Kitewheel and also brought in one of my friends from the swim team as well while I was there. So got to work with a lot of cool people.
Oh, nice. Hi, I remember Farid.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's still there at CSG, but Nick, who I brought in, is actually at Unleash, and he's what brought me there. After about 2.5 years at Kitewheel, got recruited to Appian. They were actually trying to bring me into their Boston office, but I was trying to move abroad, just experience something different. Being born in Germany was sort of an easy move for me, and they had an office there. And so they ended up bringing me in as a senior technical consultant, where I was doing very similar work to Kitewheel, where I was doing basically implementation consulting, taking our custom or our proprietary software and customizing it for clients. In this case, it wasn't marketing automation, but it was BPM software, so business process management. And that was all kinds of things. Mostly it was, the use cases could be boiled down to case management. And these were larger institutions. These were banks, insurance companies, and things like that. Mainly around Europe is where I was working. Did have some interaction with people in other countries further around the world, but not so much because we had other offices there. This is a much larger company than Kitewheel was. It's about 1,400, so still quite a bit smaller than Protivity, but it was definitely a different feel, and things moved a little bit slower. It wasn't as chaotic. Things were a lot more organized, which was nice. But yeah, so I got a lot of experience working there, working with very multicultural teams and groups of people and leading projects as well. So at Kitewheel, it was a little bit more chaotic, right, as a startup. As a consultant there, when I started, there was 3 of us. When I left, I think there was 6 or 7. And when I was there, you sort of got a client and you were the one consultant that took care of them and did everything for them and built everything, did the debugging, did the testing, everything. And at Appian, it was a bit more structured. You had a team, you'd get onto a project and you would do that project for a set period of time, typically 6 to 8 months, where you do building, testing, and deployment. And then from there, you would move on to another project. So you wouldn't sort of keep going with that for forever. That was a lot of fun. I was really enjoying it. There's no reason I wanted to leave Appian, but my friend Nick, who I had brought into Unleash back in November, or that I brought into Kitewheel, sorry, had joined Unleash back in November and had told me about it. It seemed really cool. And so there in Unleash is a startup based out of Norway, founded by 2 brothers there. It is feature toggling, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And they started as an open source project. So they're both working for a large sort of finance kind of site in Norway. And one of the brothers developed this tool to do feature toggling to make his life easier and make his coworkers' lives easier. And just sort of published it open source. He was always a fan of that. And eventually it grew to be big enough that they were having companies ask them to host it for them, asking them for new features, and they couldn't keep up with it on their own. So they decided to sort of found this open source company and bring it off the ground. So Nick joined back in November as a sort of pre-sales solution engineering position. He's developing proofs of concepts and helping out sort of at a high level with customers and all of that. And they were going to continue to build that out and build out a customer success team. And so they were able to bring me in recently, just a few months ago, or just a month or so ago, actually. So I've joined, my title is an implementation architect. It is a startup, so the titles are a little bit made up, but tried to make one that was sort of reflective of what I would be doing, which is a mix of technical customer success, account manager, architect, and really sort of bringing together the different departments within Unleash. So being the communication bridge between sales, engineering, support, and product, and sort of helping make sure that customers are successful, happy, and that they continue to use it. So Unleash is really cool. It started out open source. It's in the top, I think, 0.01% of GitHub projects with stars. It's almost at 13 million downloads from GitHub and things like that. So it's very, very popular because it's open source. Anyone can just spin it up on their own computer and use it. There's no restrictions in the majority of the content. Some of the things that they restrict for the paying customers are things like SSO and different, and expanding how many people can use it as well in different projects, and just things that make your life a little bit easier. And so lots of the times, these clients that we're getting are people who have been using it for years potentially, and are now saying, oh, we need these other things, we need these other stuff, or we like it so much that we want to expand it to other development teams, and we just need the extra seats. And so, yeah, they've brought me in, and I'll be helping make sure that all these clients are successful and continue to use it and move on. What else do I have on here? Yeah, because it's founded in the EU, it's very GDPR compliant, very privacy focused from the beginning. And so Unleash on its own does not collect any data from anything. You send it some sort of ID or like a user ID or something like that. And that's all it holds. So just some sort of GUID. And with that, it can deliver the sort of appropriate experience for that user. Just recently got our Series A, so they raised, I think, 14 million back in December. And so, yeah, really starting to take off. So to explain what feature toggles are a little bit, feature toggles are basically fancy light switches. They're the ability to turn things on and off in production without having to do a deployment. And so it is sort of perpetuating or continuing that agile methodology where you're going towards a continuous development cycle where you're always deploying, but you're only turning things on for the appropriate groups, whether that's people with a certain email address, right? So you only want to turn it on for people at your company. If you only want to turn it on for a set country, for a set period of time, maybe you have a sale that's only going on for 24 hours. You can turn different things like that. You can experiment, do A/B testing with sort of groups and gradually roll it out. So you can roll it out to 10% of your user base and then sort of continue to grow that as you see it working. And other kinds of custom activation strategies that you could do. You can also have kill switches in there as well. So you can have something where if you have a payment system and the payment system sometimes goes down, you can have something check and see if the payment system is up. And if it is, then you continue to show the users the checkout process. And if the payment system is down, maybe you offer them an alternative payment process that you have as a backup, or you just say, oh, like, please try again later. You should give them a little form to fill out where they can get an email once the payment system is back online. So it allows a very quick and instantaneous switch between sort of different experiences that a user would have. And this is done server side, and it's sort of continuously polling. And so these things do happen almost instantly when you see it happen. And I'll jump into a little demo. Any questions before I go there? No? Okay. So here we have a little demo site. This is publicly available. Anyone can go here. So if you just go to getunleashed.io, you're able to see the demo, and you can interact with it as you want as well. Just a little page here that we have to display a few different feature toggles and sort of how they work. It is kind of basic. So in here you can see this is just a strict turn on or turn off kind of feature toggle. So you either say this is on or this is off. In this case, it's disabled. And if I go in here, we can see that I have these different, let me just refresh this, make sure everything's good. I have these different steps in here. So step 1, 2, 3, 4, which is what we have in the demo over here. In step 1, I can go in here and in the overview. All right, I don't have access to change it, but that's fine. Let's go to step 2. This might be a bit better. Settings, type permission. Feel like they've done something with the permissions. I'm no longer able to edit anything here. Sorry about that. It's been a little while since I've done this. Yeah, so it seems like they have restricted this demo site a little bit. So I'll have to talk to someone to see. 1 second. Let's see if I can get into this in a different way. There we go. All right. Was able to get more permissions. All right, so we can see right here, step 1 is disabled. If I go in here and just flip this switch, it's now disabled. And I come over here, and in a second or so, this should switch. We should be able to see it in the network as well. So each time you see this 304, that's the poll, and 304 means nothing has changed. Now that I've turned it on, Okay, it seems like this might be a bit more broken than I thought it was. What should be happening is this would just say active or disabled. Down here, I would be able to, I guess I can just show you within the GUI here. Within step 2, I'd be able to add a strategy for a user ID, and I'd be able to add my user ID in here. So I have this one here. So again, I wouldn't be passing anything special, anything about me, right? This is just some sort of random number that I've been assigned. And when I add these and save it, it should be enabled for that user. And if this was working properly, you'd see this say enabled. And yeah, the gradual rollout strategy, this would be a very similar kind of thing, but in this case, a sort of percentage based. So you'd be able to do a gradual rollout and say, all right, 25%. And you'd be able to assign some sort of stickiness. So you'd be able to say either by user ID, by session, let unleashed aside, so randomly, app name, store ID, you could choose different levels of stickiness. And that way, if you assign it at the user ID level, it will randomly assign 25% of the user base one experience and everyone else the old experience. And that way, no matter how they view it, if they log in on their phone or on their browser or on their desktop, they get the same experience no matter what they're doing. And they're able to sort of see or have a consistent experience while they're doing it. And then finally, variants, you're also able to sort of return a value. And so in step 4 here, you would theoretically be able to get some sort of different variant returned. In this case, it's colors. It could be anything else, right? Which can then be used within your application to display something different or show different colors or different features or different things like that. So instead of just on off, you're able to choose between a variety of different things as well. Yeah. Any questions on this? I'm sorry the demo didn't work.
I have a question, Sebastian.
Yeah.
So is there, I guess what's kind of beyond that? So, so you have the different kind of variables and toggles that you kind of go between on the UI. Is there additional like analytics or something put on top of it that shows the response for each of these different options?
Mm-hmm. So you had some basic metrics in here, sort of how it was requested, exposed, not exposed, so on. So very basic things. But if you're doing any kind of A/B testing or any kind of actual analytics on how users interacted with the different experiences, you would tie in something like a Google Analytics or something else. Every company already has something like that set up. And so instead of trying to do it here and there, it's the better idea to just keep it all in one place. You just apply the different tags to those different UIs or whatever you're showing, and you're able to then see how the users interacted that way as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sebastian, not about your demo, but about your working experience. How different is it working for a startup company here versus there versus here?
That's a great question. The startup that I worked, so Kitewheel, which was also a startup, I felt like had a very European mindset to it. The CEO was out of London and the CTO was out of Scotland. So it's very, very European vibe there as well. I think in the US, I think the work culture in general is just a little bit more sort of always on, always working mindset. and in Europe, it's a bit less so. Once it hits 5:30 p.m. or so, you're probably not going to be able to get in contact with anyone at work anymore, even if you wanted to, which is just a different way of doing things, right? So sometimes things are a little bit slower. I think because of regulations and such as well, it's a lot more privacy mindset. Everything we do, new features we talk about doing, building, anything like that, comes with the mindset of GDPR, privacy, like and how we would interact with that as well, which I think is a bit different than it was in the US.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on to theirs and then I get
Yeah, I think it's a really cool tool. It's all API driven as well. So since this is sort of a developer
mine.
programmer tool, you're able to do everything from the command line as well if you wanted to, and just write curl commands and all of that. But we also have the GUI as well, so that anyone could use it in theory, right? Developers could build something and someone from marketing or HR or anyone else could go in and turn things on and off as they wanted to. Yeah.
Oops. Who are the major competitors?
Major competitors, there's a company called Launch Darkly, which also does feature toggling, and a company called Split. So they also compete heavily in this space. I think an advantage we have over them is that we are open source, which means you can self-host Unleash, or you can have us host it for you. Whereas they're both sort of private closed systems, which means that they're not able to be self-hosted by companies. And so some companies with larger privacy restrictions, especially in the finance area, they have a harder time getting in there or working with them just because of that. Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, Mark, if you're interested, we can set you up with a pro or enterprise account probably, and you guys can experiment with it if you wanted to.
Cool. Any questions for anybody else online on the call? Any other questions for anybody else? I want to thank both of you for coming today.